But like I was saying, those two episodes that I mentioned from X-Men kind of remind me of what's going on. The whole situation with Sally reminds me of those episodes, because it's like Sally is trapped within this concrete steel prison, isolation prison, in her mind, and all she could do is just like stare out of the bars, of the barred window, and watch as her mecha form, her mecha personality is making her do things and say things and give out information that she normally wouldn't do. So again, Prime, you do bring up a good point, a point that a lot of fans like myself have actually thought of and feel is probably the most reasonable action. Because like I said, in the video that came before this two-parter, which I apologize for, because I only have 15-minute time limit, but the video that came before this two-parter, where I talked about that you can see above, that where I talk about that, again, it's that, again, it's like history. It's like when even in real life, I mentioned this, even in real life, history has been known to leave out some details of historical facts. And later on down the line, people have had to go back and add in those missing details to those historical facts. So from a storyline aspect, the historical facts that Silver reads about the traitor probably don't say anything about an unwilling traitor. That's right, they don't probably say anything about an unwilling traitor, or a traitor who was doing this stuff against their will because they had no control in what they did. And that's something that I think a lot of people have to agree upon, that could be a plot device that's added, if you will, into the story arc, if any more plot devices need to be added, as some people would look at it. But again, everything you've said, Prime, is a good point. I mean, you do have a good point on several of them. You can't, we can't say that Sally is indeed the traitor, because if she is, she's more of an unwilling traitor. And that she's basically doing stuff against her will. And as I mentioned in the first video, at the end of the first video, and at the end of the first part, at the end of part 1, and here in part 2, what's going on with her right now reminds me of those two scenes from X-Men. Again, where Rogue had to seal up the Miss Marvel, Clara Danvers personality that was inside her mind. That, along with all these other personalities, was probably the strongest, because that's where she got her powers from. According to the X-Men 90s cartoon. Well, basically the X-Men continuity or universe, in one of the universes anyway. But it also reminds me of the scene in part 3, towards the end of part 3 of the Dark Phoenix saga, where Jean Grey was helping Charles seal up the Dark Phoenix entity inside her mind so that she, Jean Grey, can regain control. So, again, great. So again, that's kind of what this whole situation reminds me of, and I'm sure you would agree with that. I'm sure you would agree with that, because technically that's exactly what it's like. Here, like I said, here you have Sally probably mentally, in her mind, sitting or standing in this confined prison, looking out a barred window, while she's watching her mecha self do things and say things and give information that she wouldn't normally do. So, but again, I completely agree with a lot of the stuff you've said, Prime, and I'm sure a lot of people, as you've noticed, have agreed with you as well. And again, you're right. If there's anybody to really blame about the whole beam situation and basically who's immune, who's not, it has to be the writers. Because whether or not you want to blame Ian Flynn for, kind of throwing that out the window and saying, oh, by the way, just the roboticized citizens that were de-roboticized by the beam on Ian immune and nobody else is. If you want to blame Ian for, changing that, when you feel by looking at, let's say, said example a page or two back, that the beam effect, the beam immunity was for everybody, then hey, that's your right. If you want to blame the other writers for not communicating that to Ian Flynn and saying, hey, look, the beam's immunity affected everybody, that's your right too. I mean, we can't really say yay or nay what was communicated, what was lost in communication or not to that situation. So again, like I said in part 1, that's still up for debate. Anyway, I thought I'd just kind of throw this out there in a response. I'm sorry it was in 2 parts, but I got a 15-minute, or I guess you could say 15-minute, 10-second time limit here on the YT due to copyright reasons. But again, let me know what you guys think down below. Video responses and comments, especially on this board, are welcomed. Peace out.